Jeff. Jeff. Jeff.
Jeff Stein's our national and presidential expert, noted author. You can find his books at your favorite book retailer. The Iowa Business Report, the Iowa Politics Report, they come to us courtesy of KXEL Cedar Falls, Waterloo, where Jeff is currently interred. Hello, Jeff.
Interred? Services were pending, and now he's been interred. Okay.
Well,
feels like it, but why not?
It's a work release thing.
You are a spooky one, aren't you?
Oh, I am the spooky one. It is Halloween. So I did see this thing. I want to ask you about this because they said in Des Moines, because of the rain, trick-or-treaters were going to go on Halloween, which for most of us in the country are like, what? Isn't they go out on Halloween anyway?
Well, Matthew, it's nice of you to promote IowaAlmanac.com because today's story tells you about how in 1938 they switched Beggar's Night to the 30th because a bunch of hooligans had gone through and done bad things. And they literally expect you to do a trick before you get the treat. It is a tradition unlike any other, and it's always on the 30th. And I think the thought was that people would get it out of their systems before the night where they were hauling people to the hoosgow, because, again, we're going back to the 30s here. The paddy wagon came up and took scofflaws to the hoosgow. But, yes, it has always been the 30th in Des Moines, and it is now postponed for the first time ever until actual Halloween night. So there you go, IowaAlmanac.com, and you can hear me tell that story.
So basically the argument is, hey, instead of having everyone do all the bad things on the 31st, let's move it to the 30th and let them really get a two-day event in.
Well, you get the sugar high on the 30th. Maybe you crash on the 31st.
I see.
Yeah. It's not my idea. I just report the story. That's all.
Yeah, and it's gone so well for Detroit. And just it's they still have those problems out there, don't they? What is it, Devil's Night? They do that thing out there.
Whenever I think Des Moines, I immediately get it mixed up with Detroit too.
Well, that's
just like
Well, better corn. Better corn in Iowa.
Better corn. Sure.
Okay, so we have. I want to just first of all talk about the two rallies, the New York City rally with Trump, which, and I'll just go with this. You've been in politics a long time. Your final message. I mean, this is going to be your last big thing. And it sounds like what's interesting is Trump is bailing on being at the Penn State-Ohio State game coming up here this weekend. So, he's going to be doing some rallies and stuff, but nothing of the magnitude probably of Madison Square Garden. You're looking to put that final message out there. Whoever put that final message together probably needs to get fired because the message that came off that rally was anything but, hey, this is a unity party, should feel comfortable. It was scare, fear, demagoguery, and it was horrible.
It went on for so long.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I really consumed very little of any of it because, I've covered this stuff for 44 years. I'm a little jaded, and it's all the same. The tradition is that when you start your campaign, you define yourself. Then you try to define your opponent, and then you come home with a positive message about you, because people respond better to a positive message than a negative one. The Trump rally went on for, 6 hours. I mean, literally something like that. It was just an extended period of time. And whoever assembled the guest list, the speakers list, should have been fired by Sunday night.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand putting a comedian on there anyway. And, especially one who thinks he's the modern day coming of Don Rickles. That act wouldn't fly today, and it sure doesn't. Hey, I know, let's hire the guy who does the profane roasts on Comedy Central. What a good idea. If the joke is so nuanced you have to explain it and refer to Wikipedia, no, stupid. Then you have a New York radio host who is just working his tail off to get a national gig, and then says what he says about self-hating Jews or whatever. That's a great plan. I mean, if you take those messengers out, you had a pretty consistent, albeit still scattershot, approach. For a messenger who is always all over the place, namely Trump, crystallizing it down to, now you may disagree with the premise, but you have to admit the slogan is at least memorable. She broke it, Trump will fix it. Okay, now again, you can quibble on the merits. But if the idea was to focus on Trump will fix it, that's not a bad message, but it was completely lost, was it not?
Well,
in all of the other stuff?
Can I just say this? That little message you put out, I really haven't heard that message. I know that that's something he's probably said behind the scenes, but as you just said, he's so scattershot that if that was the message, I think this race would be a little bit closer for sure. If she broke it, I'm going to fix it.
Here's why.
And
you're right. He came upon it just out of the blue. It just seemed like it just spontaneously came up, and it was for the first time Sunday on the podium placard. Trump will fix it. People in the stands had cards that said Trump will fix it. That, however they came upon it, that was the closing statement. That was what was going to just really be memorable. And it just blew up.
Well, and that should have been the statement from the beginning, because I can tell you right, mass deportations now at the RNC didn't really, that was a negative too. And it wasn't.
It's hard to fit deportations on a sign.
Yeah,
it's just too long a word.
The comedian not only makes the comment about Puerto Rico, but he also, that comment about watermelon and African Americans was pretty offensive. As well as the other one. The one guy that called Kamala the Antichrist, Hulk Hogan, basically implied that she was going to have sex workers. It was just a horrible message. And the problem that they had, I think, afterwards was they try their hardest to come on out and say, wasn't that great? And the reality is no one was buying it was great. And the fact that they quickly went on the defensive, especially about the Puerto Rico joke, and it's not a joke, the Puerto Rico line, which wasn't a joke, it was actually incredibly insensitive, and tried to make that sort of, oh, that was no big deal. I mean, it was some horrific planning, which really, at this point, this isn't February. This is late October. How is this? They are really, really bad at this. And we've said this before. A lot of this is the fact that he's installed his cronies, his family into these positions. And you need to have people that are not just going to be yes men to tell you, dear Lord, you probably shouldn't do that, because that's going to send a bad message.
The problem, as I can tell from the outside of the Sunday event, was I think the Madison Square Garden approach was fine. I think the New York kid comes back to New York, fine. I mean, it has no impact. It's fine, right? Who needs a 6-hour event? You have to say no to some of the people. I mean, you don't need every single person who ever endorsed you to speak at the event. And the list, when they sent, the campaign sends out news releases, I get them from both sides. Yeah. All right, so here's the list of speakers, and I'm like, I'm scrolling. I'm like, oh my God, pack a lunch. Did you have a cut of the concessions? Because this is clearly going to straddle all 3 NFL games, which actually it did, come to think of it. So the biggest mistake was you've got to say no. Now, do you need a little showmanship of having Hulk Hogan dance around the stage a little bit? Fine. Why does he need to speak? Doesn't. I get why you want to have, your traveling roadshow of Kennedy and Gabbard and Carlson. I mean, I get that. But it just, as is the case with most of the Trump rallies, and SNL has tagged it perfectly a couple of times this fall, they go on so long, by the time the main attraction is there, you just go home. You're just tired. It's like, I don't need 58 previews before the movie. Just give me the movie. And they just don't. Somebody does not have that discipline. I don't know where it comes from. It might come from the top, because as we've discussed before, with all due respect to Mr. Trump, I don't think he listens to anyone's counsel but his own.
No, I would agree with that. And I think that after that debacle in Michigan, where everyone was freezing out there, I think to a point, part of this was, we've got an indoor venue. we can go as long as we want.
But that's where they pass out, because the doors are closed. I mean,
let's contrast this with Kamala Harris. That rally last night in D.C. on the spot where Trump basically pointed at the Capitol and said, "Go get him." Goes on out there, 75,000 by accounts, a massive crowd, regardless. But not only this, as you just kind of comparing to what you just said, she goes down to Houston, has that 30,000 person rally with Beyonce out there. And it's not 15 speakers. There might be one or two people set up that are local, the local races. Here comes Beyonce. Here comes Kamala. Everyone have a nice time. Drive safe. And they do that. Her campaign messaging at these rallies, I think, has been it's been consistent to what we've seen in the past, which compared to Trump now looks like a masterstroke. But the reality is this is how they always used to do it, is what she's doing right now.
The Beyonce thing. Her campaign people led folks to believe that Beyonce was coming to the DNC to hype the TV ratings, saying there'd be a special guest, then no Beyonce, and then they said afterwards, well, Kamala was the special guest. Didn't you understand that? No, we didn't. And they dissuaded no one from, and now, there's not a sentence where they say, Beyonce will sing. But that was the impression. And so when people see
they're thinking it's going to be, Coachella. Because that's what you think about when Beyonce shows up for an event. It's like Taylor Swift is going to be here. You're either going to see her next to Travis Kelce, or you're going to see her with the top hat and the sequins out on the stage. And the reality is that I want to know the truth is I thought it was a nice message. Yes, she did not. She came out very kind of like, this is why I'm doing this. To a point, I get what you're saying. To another point is, well, these are all people. They're just regular people as well, in a sense, being they're just voters as well. And so I get that, but I don't have any problem with it because, once again, 30,000 people, and it was packed as I think Trump at that same time was having a rally in Georgia, which by the time they got 1 hour into his speech, it was 1/3 empty because it went past the what was the college football game. That was he did the rally at State College, Pennsylvania. That's right.
On Saturday.
Right. That's right.
And it went into the Penn State game.
And they all left.
But now here's the thing. First of all, the fact that you say top hat and sequins means you know way too much about Taylor Swift concerts.
I've got one teenage girl left. The other girl is 20. I know Taylor Swift, and frankly, I'm offended. I love Tay-Tay. Thank you very much.
Oh, shake it off. So.
Listen. Oh, Mr. Subtle there. I can see your bedroom's covered in posters.
That may well be, but it has nothing to do with it. Okay. So the problem is, Ms. Knowles Carter, Beyonce,
yes,
presented a very good message.
Yes.
The problem was there were a ton of chuckleheads there who thought they were getting a free concert and started just railing on the socials and booing and doing all of this when that didn't happen.
It was minor. That was minor. Well, there's a little bit of that, but that wasn't by any means, as a person who's on the left and has got a lot of people that fall on the left, there were one or two people, but most people were like, it was wonderful. So,
but here's what I said about it earlier in the week, because I did a piece where I pointed out, if you're Trump, you can do Joe Rogan, but you don't leave people in the cold in Michigan for 2 hours. You don't overlap the Penn State rally. If you're Kamala Harris's campaign and you already had the little stumble with Beyonce once, you be real careful when you do have Bruce Springsteen singing and you do have Willie Nelson singing and then say, oh, yeah, and Beyonce. Don't lead, because the election is too close for any misstep to be made.
But
now, it's very possible.
Okay. You're okay, and I got to stop you. Your misstep is, they thought that Beyonce was going to sing. He's out there cosplaying freaking Hitler. And when Stephen Miller comes out and says America for Americans, I mean, that's a direct quote that's just been translated.
You've misstated what I very clearly said. You don't make that mistake if you're her campaign, because it's too close. These are unforced errors, as I turned them all on the air this week, both sides. I am not going down the Hitler and fascist road because I don't believe in that kind of pejorative language. If you want to get to what people said, That's entirely different. But now you can't merge the two topics.
I got to take a break. We come on back. It's the Jeff Stein joining the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, in the nighttime hours 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Jeff Stein joining us here. Now, Jeff, the reason why I kind of reacted the way I did on that is bluntly this. I'm watching today all these people saying, President Biden called the voters garbage. Isn't he horrible? It's like, have you heard what you've said to every Democrat the last 9 years? It's and the national news media going ballistic about this is a joke. As a matter of fact, I mean, I made up a list of things that they have said, Antichrist, demons, enemy within, druggies, groomers, pedophiles, Nazis. They've called the Democrats Nazis. They've called these things, and they've used garbage. As a matter of fact, the Lincoln Project has a video up right now of Trump in September calling all Democrats garbage. And yet nobody had a problem with that. And all of a sudden, Joe Biden says it in response to Republicans calling Puerto Rico garbage, and then Donald Trump calling America the garbage can. And he says it, and it's kind of one of those things where it's this is somehow out of line, and this is fine. They might have screwed up in the sense being that people were thinking Beyonce was going to be there, but that's not, I think, necessarily a massive hit to where it's going to be like, oh, she's going to lose voters that way. I think insulting Puerto Rico. I mean, I think the reason why he's bailing on Pennsylvania right now is the strong Puerto Rican population in Pennsylvania has basically instantaneously turned him against him. I think that's a far bigger problem for Trump than anything about Beyonce performing or not performing in Houston.
Well, you're talking about two very different things. They don't have to be merged. Both can be correct. The shadow senator from Puerto Rico came to Pennsylvania and endorsed Trump after the comments. I think both sides. I mean, I'm tired of both sides because of the fact that what's dominating conversation, not news coverage, because that's already lost. We just don't have any good coverage of these things. It's all 30 seconds at best. Gotcha. But just even in conversation, people are talking. They're not talking about issues. They're talking about the personality things. They're talking about the comments that somebody makes or somebody else. I couldn't give two whits if Joe Biden said what Joe Biden said or didn't say. Take any of the transcript. I've listened to it 15 times literally because I'm trying to hear what was said. You can't take one sentence out of a 4-minute statement. It makes no difference in terms of who should be the leader of the free world. And the fact that they all dive in, it's like, how about just talking about what anybody will do in office? Start with that. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good place to start because, frankly, the distinctions between these two candidates on issues alone, biggest difference in generations, and then you put the personality in on top of it. But start with the issues.
Well, and for me, I see this bias, particularly in the news media, which is so obscene. That, and we've talked about this. The bar for Trump is so low that it doesn't even matter. Harris, sure, she gave her agricultural plan, but it didn't include enough on collard greens and peaches and pecans and wild rice. How dare you not have a fully flushed out plan? And you're like, dear God, I mean, this can't be the standard we have. That, I mean, everything has to be 1,000%, or as Van Jones said, she has to be flawless. Trump can be lawless. That was a good line. But that's the truth. That's how it's perceived.
And Van Jones, who I had the privilege of talking to years ago about the prison project. I mean, to me, he's an honest broker. He gets whipped around from both sides of that CNN stage because he'll give credit. And I think he did during the RNC about, okay, they pulled this off pretty well. So I find him to be generally an honest broker, although very clear about his views. The whole thing has just gone off the rails so much, to the point that all the early voting means is you're getting all of the confirmed people on both sides in. But all this stuff, the last 10 days, it's going to turn off people who are moderately interested. And if we lose the middle of the nation participating because they're fed up with either the media or social media or the candidates or whatever, you've lost the country.
This is our last show before we will have a post-election, whether or not we'll be able to announce who the winner is next Wednesday will remain to be seen. Yeah. But, I mean, I'll put mine out there, but I'll put yours out there. What do you expect to happen on election? I mean, once this is all done and all the votes are counted, who do you think is going to win this election?
Oh, boy. I did the numbers to 270 the other day. I think the path to 270, when I did that on Sunday, was Trump. I don't know that we can tell right now. I honestly cannot tell you how this is going to turn out. I will tell you that once we know Pennsylvania, I think that's going to be the outcome. I think Pennsylvania will be the bellwether, because if Trump does not flip Pennsylvania back, the path is virtually impossible.
And the fact that he's not doing an event in Pennsylvania this weekend is a sign. I disagree with that. I think this is wholeheartedly. I'm frankly, once again, we have to point out that since 2022, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, every pollster has undercounted the Democratic majority in margins by 5 to 15 points. It's been consistent across the board. I think that this is not only going to be – I think North Carolina is going to go for Harris. I think Georgia is going to go for Harris. And the question I have is, will both Texas and Florida go for Harris? I think Florida will. I don't think Texas will. I think this is going to be a rout. And the good news is – I'm dead serious. I think Nevada, Arizona, I think all the swing states outside of maybe one or two go for Harris. And I think that this will be three – she'll be in the 300s as far as this count, and it's over.
Well, keep in mind, last time Biden was at 305. You adjust it for the changes since in the Electoral College, that would be 303. So if she's at that level, that's similar to the Biden-Harris win. I'm interested in the story that she is moving $2 million of ad buys out of North Carolina.
She's not. Actually, that's not true. Actually,
because it made no sense to me. That's why I thought, okay, are you moving it to another state or somewhere else?
That's right-wing talking points. And by the way, I knew that was false when all of a sudden I had 5 different people posting, "Oh, she's moving money out." I'm like, okay, no, they're not. They're actually there. The reality is,
I saw it on CBS, which I don't think is right-wing talking points, so they hopefully have corrected that.
No, that's she's not moving money out, that she's staying there. But I will say, too, that you can't have Robinson. The last poll I saw, his minus 21 on that governor's race. So you're saying 22% of the population of North Carolina is going to vote for the Democratic governor but vote for Trump? You and I talked about historic margins before on that one. Yeah. I think that would be beyond the pale. Obviously, I'll get out your Iowa politics report a little bit later on. I imagine it's got some good stuff in there, and the Iowa business report as well. No, not really.
No, not really.
Happy Halloween, my friend. We will talk to you on Tuesday night, election night. Bye, Chicago, Seattle, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hour 2 up next.